and welcome to the latest session for Duncan and Topless on air. Today we're going to be talking about International Friendship Day, which will be celebrated on Sunday the 30th of July. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Heidi Thompson, our HR Director here at Duncan and Topless and also Head of HR and Payroll Services.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, looking forward to it. So I suppose we best start with, what is the International Day of Friendship for?
Well, the International Day of Friendship began in 2011 by the United Nations General Assembly, really in order to highlight that friendship can inspire peace, efforts, and build bridges between communities, especially in relevance to countries and cultures. The emphasis of the day is really on young people, as they're our future leaders, and it's important for peace to outweigh the many challenges such as violence that unfortunately the world currently faces. So it's very multifaceted.
Okay, so what sort of role do you think friendship plays in the workplace?
I think it's something that's so important actually, because I don't know how much thought we give to it at times, but I've had, a number of jobs like a lot of people, and I think of all the amazing people that I've worked with over the years and how some of them have become, very good friends, sometimes, during a certain period, sometimes longer and some still today. And, there's a lot of research actually that it helps to motivate, helps people feel happier at work and just really enjoy the workplace, which we spend a lot of time here, don't we?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So when you go back to sort of the phrasing around work-life balance and how that works, how does friendship fit into that? So we talk about friends at work, but of course there's a big old life.
Yeah, and I think it's that interesting, isn't it? Are friendships at work just at work, or do they come into real life? And I guess there's probably a mixture for people. We do spend, hopefully we do get a work-life balance, but ultimately we are spending a significant amount of time of work, regardless of what hours we work. And to be able to come in every day and to look forward to being there and chatting to people that you like and get on with really well is so valuable, because we trust people more if we like their company. And it's not that we have to be friends with everyone, we don't, but to have someone that you feel really comfortable with, that you can talk to when you're unsure of things, and to have fun with, and all of those things I think are beneficial.
And that famous saying about not mixing business with pleasure, how do you think friendship in the workplace is part of that?
Yeah, it's an interesting saying, isn't it? And it's well known, but it almost implies that business can't be in any way pleasurable, almost that it's a chore and it has to be difficult. And yeah, let's be honest, work isn't always, it can be challenging. And not all of us are lucky enough to have a place of work that we really enjoy. But in truth, I don't think they have to be exclusive now. I think it's great. We work best when we trust people, when we can respect people and have a great relationship where we can be open and honest. And that is naturally going to come across as friendship at times. And that's going to go beyond, I wouldn't say it goes beyond business, because again, I think they can be both. I think sometimes you'd have friendships that maybe only sit within the workplace and you may never socialise for a whole variety of reasons. And then other times you'll have really close friends at work where they're very much part of their life. And I think all of those can be beneficial for everyone.
Do you think that's almost saying goodbye to parts of a traditional hierarchy where you would have boss and employee? You're now talking about quite deep personal friendships, relationships with people that you work with. Have you seen that as almost a movement, a cultural change in terms of how friendly people are together?
I think so, because I think now we work, whilst a lot of people still do work very traditionally 9 to 5, work is involved in many aspects of our lives, and it doesn't generally always start and end at a certain point. So people are very, our working colleagues are very much part of our life. So I think the same way there's a manager, team member, employee, they are the same way. And I think it's more beneficial actually. It's not that, it's not just about being friends, but having that respect and support. There doesn't have to be this barrier between them to have a good, effective relationship. You can still have boundaries and you can still have respect and all of those things. But it's okay to have fun and feel comfortable with each other. And that's got to be a positive thing.
I think thinking about the International Day of Friendship, it reminds me that we have international friends through Creston Global.
Yes.
And our relationship with them, of course, is very digital. Have you seen any influence of that digitisation on relationships in in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, particularly with COVID and a lot of us having to move to, even Team or Zoom or whatever package you might use, that suddenly made us much more accessible. So in some ways, whilst it was a time where we were all apart, so in some ways we were more isolated than ever, in a lot of cases it brought a lot of us closer together, because whereas we sometimes would avoid picking the phone up, we all can be a bit guilty of that, Teams or Zoom or whatever, now it means that you just, one click away from chatting to someone, you visually seeing them, which has a big impact with communication anyway. And equally, of course, that doesn't have anything to do with geography. So, as you say, you can be talking to someone in any different country, any different town at any time. And for me, and I'm sure a lot of others, I certainly built a lot more closer relationships during that time, which was a really lovely thing, particularly when, it was a hard time for so many people and we all needed each other just that little bit more.
And I suppose what's disappeared in that time was the opportunity to go for after work drinks or some of the more in-person socialising that we do. What role do you think team socials play in friendly workplaces?
I think they are important, or they can be important, but I think we don't often people work away from their homes now. So whereas perhaps, sometimes people when they commuted, there's less of that now. So people are driving often. So that sort of traditional drink after work, I think, has moved away for lots of reasons. And people have, parental or caring responsibilities or just busy lives. So I think social events are still very valuable, but it's important that they're more inclusive. So I think rather than just doing one type of thing, companies are trying to find different ways to interact and connect people, but also recognising that just because you don't want to do that or you can't do that, there's still lots of other ways to interact within the day, and it's trying to get that balance. So, but I don't think they're gone. I think there's still something that's important, but we are learning more and more, for particularly people who are hybrid working at home, how we can still connect even if we're not always physically together.
So do you think there are any added complications to having a stronger friendship in the workplace when it comes to social interactions, perhaps particularly if they are in a more social environment rather than in the office? What disadvantages may there be?
I don't think it's necessary that there's a disadvantage of having friendships, but naturally, with my HR hat on, there's always going to be potentials for problems when we bring people together. And I don't think that's because of friendships at all. I think you can have challenges with people you work with. We have policies and procedures in place. It's important that we, as always, follow our values, our cultures, to make sure people are feeling welcomed. And, as a company, you have to take responsibility for that for your team members. But I don't think it's that friendships cause that. But in reality, yes, things can happen and sometimes they go wrong. And that's about companies dealing with those quickly, effectively, and being really clear about the expectations. And ultimately, it's about good behaviour, good culture. It's nothing more than that. But, you do have issues.
I suppose on the flip side of that is potential advantages to having certain types of friendships and how impacts of friendships may affect career opportunities, as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where, you have to have certain boundaries. And, if you were, for example, very close friends with someone that then became your boss or you became their boss, I don't think that means you couldn't have that relationship. But that's then you've got to consider, is there a different way of managing? Should someone else manage that person? And I think sometimes we have to be honest and open about those things. But I don't think you can stop friendships. And a lot of it is down to kindness, isn't it? Which is ultimately what we want from a company. And I think we overlook how important kindness is, really, because we just want to enjoy ourselves. And if we're open and honest with each other and we come from a position of trust, that's what creates a nicer working environment. And if people work together long enough, it would be crazy to think that they wouldn't form any kind of relationship. It would be odd, wouldn't it, to say, not ask someone what they did at the weekend or talk about their children or things that are going on in their life, because our lives are complicated and amazing and difficult at times. And the idea that we can just dump that all before we walk in the office is not realistic. So having people there to support us is really useful, and vice versa. So I think there are always challenges to everything, but nothing that can't be overcome with a basis of good culture and values and a bit of common sense as well.
So we've talked about the depth of relationship that you can have with a colleague and how those friendships are so important to how you feel at work and how your team works together. We'll have all experienced times where friends at work have left the workplace, and that can have quite a strong impact on the team and individuals emotionally. What's your experience of that?
I think it's such an interesting point, because when we think about friendship, we tend to have the sense that it needs to be permanent. Almost if we stop being friends with someone, that seems almost that we've done something wrong, or, that's a failure. But actually, friendships are just like any relationship. They come and go, and they're often at the right time, at the right, at the right moment. And I've certainly had people at work that I've been really close to when I work with them, and I'm sure we've all had it, and you get on really well and you share a lot together. I've been to weddings and all of those things, and now we're probably Facebook friends. We don't probably see each other, and it's not because we don't still have every care for them, or there's probably some I'm not even friends with on Facebook, because they were very much of a moment of time, and you have lots of other friends outside of work, and you sort of say you're going to catch up. We've probably all had the situation where we've met an old colleague 6 months later, and then think, oh, there's not a lot in common now, when we realised that the commonality was the workplace. But I don't think we should see that as a negative, because I think those people are so important at that moment in time, and that's a great thing. And so, it can be very sad when you leave work. And I think that's what often makes it hard sometimes for people when they join a new company, because suddenly it feels like you've got no friends at work. But actually, what's an amazing opportunity that you've got that chance to meet new people all of the time. And it's important that we're really open-minded about that, because at work we meet people outside our usual social circles, people we wouldn't have met before. And I certainly have, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And that's, to me, what really enriches our life, because you realise that you become friends with someone that you would, as I say, you wouldn't have met normally, and that brings so much diversity to your life, so much change, so much challenge. You learn so much from different people. And so as much as we talk about friendship, what I would always say at work is it's really opening your mind up to just getting to know different people from different backgrounds, different types of people that you might normally be closer to, because that's what makes life so interesting. And I think for work, that's the benefit, that diversity of thought, having lots of different types of people is so advantageous for any company.
So you're touching on something that I've often thought about in the workplace, and can be quite tricky to explore. So I'll see how we go with this one. But what you're explaining, in my mind, is love. When you're talking about friendships with people, you love them, you love your colleagues. Obviously not in a romantic way, not in the way that you love your family, but there is love there.
Yeah.
And when somebody leaves that team, I felt myself that feeling almost of a grief, because they're very deep and strong. We don't talk about love in a business sense.
No, we don't want it to seem so sentimental, but in truth it is a love. Yeah, I think back to, I remember from a previous company working with lots of amazing people, but particularly two who I was incredibly close to. I'm still friends with them today. I left that company, and I remember I knew it was the right thing for me, but I was incredibly sad. I remember crying that day. And a lot of that was leaving those people. It was a great company, but I was very sad to leave them. And a few years later, we ended up working in the same company again. We basically could not be parted, and we've all moved on again since then. But they had a huge impact in my life, and I have a lot of love for them, and as you say, people that I've always worked with, because that's what kindness and caring is. You want the best for people. And I don't know that ever could be a bad thing.
So that sort of brings us full circle in terms of well-being and how feeling positive at work can be so important, and friendship certainly gives you that. Will you be doing anything special to celebrate International Friendship Day?
Well, I am seeing my friend, actually, yeah. And, same as everyone, I've got friends, in different places you don't get to see so much. So, I am actually going out with my friend that day, as it slightly coincidentally, but it is certainly, for me, it's very important to see friends. And actually the person I'm seeing is someone that I used to work with as well, So I think it's so important to keep those connections.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you very much.